201. Friction. Upon what does the amount of the friction depend? Answer. Friction is the resistance of the body that meets with the surface of which it moves. It depends on the pressure between the surface and the condition of the same. The body moving over the smoother surface will produce less friction than moving over the rough surface. The friction is greater between the soft bodies and then the hard ones, proportional to their perpendicular pressure between the two surfaces in contact. 202. The oil and frictional surfaces. What is the effect of introducing oil between the frictional surfaces? Answer. Reduction friction, less wear of the bearing of the separating of the metal with the same placing of the film of the oil between them. It will have the heavy blocks over the platform that cannot move with it, and the reason would be the friction would be greater with the power. If we lay over the grease with the film of the oil between the surfaces in contact, could move more easily. This would be sliding the friction. Then it would put the rollers on until under it could roll into the easier would he cause the slide. The would be the rolling friction in the film oil with the introduced between the two bearing with the act of the roller with reducing friction to keep it in the metal parts apart. 2003. Abuse of the engines. What would you consider abuse of the engines? Sliping the engine with taking the hair from the roundhouse track of the opening of the cylinder back from the lever of the water with the cylinder, slipping the hair at any of the time of the catching on the sand at any of the time without closing the throttle, reversing the engine with the brake set, sliding the driver, the flattening tower of the motor, pumping, knocking the steam pressure down with the too much injector, pulling the cut out of the station without having the fire in the proper condition, working the engine bad or harder than necessary to handle with the train, and making time with working water, wet steam through the valve of the cylinders, imperfect lubrication, firing engine without getting the cold forward section with the grates, causing the flues and leak, with the failure to tighten the nut of the driver of the key with the knee, with the not reporting necessary work on the arrival of the terminals as going toward the abuse on the engine. 204. Horsepower of the engine. What is the horsepower of a 17 by 24 inch cylinder? Which please give the answer worked out. Answer formula is PALNA and P times A times L times N divided by 33,000 horsepower. Assume the pressure number of the stroke, but they're not given with the assume the file of the proceed with the example. The P means the effective pressure of the per square inch on the piston with 100 pounds area of the piston. A if this in square inches. L the length of the stroke in 2 is in feet of 2, and N the number of the revolutions per 200. You would actually receive then it goes through the figures. The figure of 1724 to the inch cylinder is 1 inch. For the figure with the locomotive, the horsepower would be 2 times the 550. 0.25. The horsepower is 1100.5 horsepower as per above example. 2005. Direct and indirect valve motion. There with a greater difference in opinion with whether the certain class of the engines are in direct and indirect valve motion. There is inside mission piston, the valve of the transmission bar with the go-ahead centric valve with the pins, same as the ordinary indirect engines. Please advise what they are in direct and indirect engines. Figure 1 shows the inside of the mission piston, the valve of the indirect rocker. You will observe the piston eccentric of the shaft of the shaft axle directly opposite of the piston that would be if the end there was outside emission valve. The inside, instead of being advanced toward the pin and mount, the lap and lead, there are advanced ways with the pin and the internal and external emission valves make change with the position eccentric of the necessary of the indirect rocker. This illustration is view of the indirect motion of the rocker. It also shows the figure 1, figure 2, and figure 3, the link arm and the valve arm, link arm. Because the illustration of the indirect motion of the rocker because of the valve of the traveling one direction, eccentric with the traveling opposite direction. Figure 2 shows the same kind of the valve of the mission inside the mission, but with the direct motion of the rocker, eccentric valve of the both with the same direction. Illustration with the eccentric are plate with the shaft in the same position. If you have an indirect rocker with an outside emission valve, the front steam port must be open with the admitted steam of the cylinder in both illustrations. If the engine is put up in shown figure 2, but that has the direct motion of the engine. Figure 3 with the show of the indirect motion. Indirect rocker of the left and with the indirect rocker of the right, with the right rocker on the link arm of the valve of the arm opposite without the direct rocker. 206. Troublesome boiler check. I am firing with the 8 wheel with the wagon top of the boiler engine equipped with the number 8 monitoring injectors on both sides of the boiler. Checks are in the barrel boiler set up above the level of the center of the same. The injectors on the level of the top of the tank. They work in a good shape until the tank was 1/2 empty and less. Then every time the injectors either side of the shut off the boiler checkers stick up and then give it no trouble. And any other time of the tank is over half full of water. The both checks have been grounded and examined and pronounced all right. There is given no sign of the leakage. When the injectors are not in use, what is the trouble? Answer. The description given in the action of the check with the opinion of the expert for the trouble from sediment dispositive the value interior of the cage and passage of the boiler through the check vent. The check valve may be fitted with to allow the deposit with interfering with the free of the action. Check the height of the water of the tank with no wave influence of the boiler. Check with the proper condition. Possibly valve with the sheet of the battery sufficiently with the cover tight and the fit of the free with the action of the valve of the scud and would require personal examination. Order to the required with the definite conclusion would be recommended the check be insufficient. Loose of the valve would fit, but the reset readily at all times. The injector would shut off. The injector worked when the worked by air pressure can. Injector worked by air pressure can, and an injector worked by boiler with an air pressure in the instead of the steam. If not, and why not? I've consulted several different engineers about this in varying opinion. Alright, the answer is no, it cannot. The injector with the instrument will force the boiler against the pressure equal to the that of the steam that would be the operating with the steam forcing the water through the injector, and the boiler gives up the heat and part of the velocity of the water starts the momentum sufficient to overcome the pressure even higher than the original pressure of the steam. The greater deal with the velocity of the steam, the giving up of the water, give the water sufficient energy to open the check valve of the engine of the boiler as the steam condenses for the imparting of the heat of the velocity of the water pipe, the solid fuel water. When the water does not condense, the steam too high temperature for the too hot, the injector will not work. Therefore, the reason for the injector will not work for the air pressure for this says the mixture of the air and water would make bubbles. It would not be pseudo solid body of the water to absorb the velocity of the mixing with the air, as you could not have the air with the watering occupying the same space at the same time. Our experience has been the reversing engine opening the throttle, preventing the striking of the rear end of the proceeding of the train. The injector will always broken at account of the air mixture of the steam. 208% of the heat used. Will you kindly give me the percent of the heat used, the percent of the heat escaped at the stack of the locomotive while working? Answer: in order to make this clearly, we'll have to take an example to work out the answer. The condition varies so much. The answer will be only appropriately correct in the specific case. We will assume that you have an engine of 27 inches and cylinder driving the axle 56 inches of diameter, the boiler pressure 175 pounds, running to the speed of 12 miles per hour, allowing the main effective pressure cylinders at 78%, with the boiler pressure would obtain the tractive after 33,000 pounds. With the locomotive would develop 1 horsepower per ton with a coil with 12 miles per hour equal to 1,556. Engine running with 15 miles per ton with a coil with 12 miles per hour. She will burn 26 and 6/10 pounds of coal per minute. Now all the energy we will be able to get with the energy stored with the coal with their heating units, the mechanical equivalent, the heat unit, the expression British thermal units, by the change the work equal to 778 foot-pounds of work. The figure then 1 pound contains 11,600 BTU for the heat units would be stored in the 26 and 6/10 pounds coal times 7,320 horsepower. If and all the heat you will cover into the work, but as they cannot will be the difference between the energy. Take one not liberated with the coal combustion with the engine energy delivered with the drawbar, overcome the train resistance, which would be 7,320 and 1,506 horsepower respectively, and the 14th and 4/10% of the heat of the coal used. 209. Temperature. How would the degree of the temperature first for the found with the determination? Answer: the Dr. Joel of England found the test with a series of careful experiment with the British thermal heat with a unit that exceed 778 foot-pounds of work. The British thermal unit with the quantity of the heat will rate for the temperature of the 1 pound of water 1 degree for the 72 degrees, 63 degrees Fahrenheit. The Fahrenheit thermometer with the generally used for the country with the instrument using the measuring temperature, using the thin glass tube with the one end of which the bulb filled with the mercury and up being heated, but the mercury expands in proportional temperature. Fahrenheit thermometer is graduated and show the degrees. Take the glass tube with the surrounding with a melting ice with the temperature of 30 degrees, marking the tube with the height with the mercury with the surround with the tube with the temperature boiling water at sea level with it 212 with the mercury expanding with the tube with the rising of the higher when the temperature when was the temperature melting ice. Now mark the tube whenever the mercury stands. The temperature boiling water divides the distance with 180 parts to call degrees shown in the height of the mercury in the tube of the Fahrenheit thermometer. 210 broken piston valve. I will ask you how to bring the piston valve engine to a piston valve on the side of the broken. Nothing to do with it. Only with the tool equipped. Only nothing to do with it. Only the tool equipped that is necessary to go in the engine over the road. Answer: the first go on the side of the eighth of the quarter. You can start the engine when you're ready to go. Disconnect the valve rod of the rocker arm if you can place the valve position desired over the port of the screw of the air handle of the case, and the same as the wood broken side slide valve of the engine. Leave the back of the port slightly open about the thickness of the piece of the tin. Remove the valve of the back cylinder cock. This to prevent the taking down of the main rod. If you clamp the valve rod into the position, it would hold the valve in place and steam the admitted with the cylinder end will take oil and lubricate the cylinders while running the main rod up, and if you anytime you stuck on the center of the good side, or by replacing the valve in the cylinder, cock steam will be emitted to the back end of the cylinder on the disabled side to move the engine off the center of the good side, with saving the pinch if the valve is broken out, so that you can not do this with the valve, to take off the valve chamber, the head and plate for the broken piece, so that they will cover the parts of the ports, so that they can lock them securely. Replace the head if the valve is so badly broken that it cannot be done. Only the way out of drifting difficulty will be to remove the broken valve entirely from the valve chamber, to cut out the piece for the post, the telegraphic pole with the valve chamber, the blocking the emission of the steam of the cylinder, preventing it to escape through the exhaust ports of the stack, getting in the section of the get house. If you get now to solve the axe of the caboose, then borrow the tools from the farmer near one, or if near one. 211 bypass valve. What is the bypass? What is the bypass valve, and what are its uses? Answer: the bypass valve is used to relieve the compression excessive pressure for the cylinders. And the valve closed at the port of the time the exhaust closure for the steam did not get out while the port is open. The compressor of the piston complete for the stroke for the call of the compression. Piston moving the torque of the cylinder head compressed for the steam, and the clearance of the space for the higher pressure in the steam chest, and with a slide valve with the compression great enough to lift the valve with the steam. You see the pressure relieve the piston valve. The valve cannot lift this from the seat, but the bypass valve is used to relieve the pressure and prevent the breaking of the cylinder head. There are many kinds of they are all used for the same purpose, but they usually connect with the steam ports on the cylinders with the steam chamber between the piston of the piston valve being held into the seat. The pressure of the steam of the chamber, when the compression exceeds the valve is forced by the seat of the and the steam escapes back in the steam chamber. This is always to prevent the waste of the steam and the would-be kite allowed to escape the atmosphere through the popping and compression valve in the cultivating cylinder head. Alright, 212, lap and lead. What effect would be produced upon the lap and the lead of the engine and changing the length of the eccentric blades? Answer: lap of the mount of the valve extend for the outside edge for the steam ports of the valve at the center of the seat. The valve edge would extend over the edge of the port with 1 inch of the would-be, in terms of it as being having 1 inch lap of the lead of the mount with the opening of the steam port with the piston about being getting with the stroke of the governor with the position of the eccentric relations to prevent advancing of the eccentric toward the pin, increasing the lead of the valve with the outside emission of the indirect rocker. The now changing the length of the eccentric blade would not change the lap of the lead over the valve. The distance of the valve would travel over the seat would remain with the steam, but the shortening of the blade would cause it to travel too far from the forward work of the steam at the back end of the cylinder. Lengthening the blade would cause the travel too far back will work without much of the steam in the forward end of the cylinder would have no effect on the lap and blade. Number 213, question 213, key brasses. What is necessary to keeping the brasses keys up properly? Answer: to prevent them from pounding with the passing of the center, but preventing excessive wear on the pins, brasses, and to keep them from getting loose for the rod straps. The brass needs the key to will often pound itself hot and make trouble to the engineer working for the machinist, which would properly keep the running with a spool running cool. Here's where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of care. 214, using water with a hot pin. What is the objection of using a hot pin with where grease is used? There's no real objection of using water with the pin and the grease of the soft nature of the pin, with the pin with the plunger with the grease cup with the butt and hard grease the U with the force with the hole in the trap and passed by the pressure with the produce with the screw down with the plug with the water with the floor will flush over the grease of the round with the cooler of the pin with the grease will not be staying in position between the brass and pin as well. If the water is used, this grease is similar to the bar yellow soap that is made with the caustic soda with the lye of the valve oil metallo. When the pin is run in the water, grease is washed off, made in the studs, but they have not sufficient consistency to keep the metals apart. You will notice with the trip of the hardens from a rainstorm, the grease will work out of the pasture and the pin run harder than when the water is dry. 215, broken safety valve spring. What could be done with the safety valve of the spring? Should be regularly remove the cap. There is one of the top of the screw with the down with the adjusting screw with it as far as it will go. Then jam. If the jam with the nuts will prevent the screw from going down or far enough to split the nut with the screwing it down for the far enough to hold the valve in solid to the seat. The broken pop valve with the spring with the render with the valve and the operative with the other will reveal the pressure until they arrive at the terminal. This is one reason there are two more valves are used with the 216 stuck wedge. Alright, a stuck wedge. If the wedge was stuck, in what manner would we proceed to get it down? Loosen the jam on the wedge and a bolt on the top of the pedestal with the end of the brace with the pull down. The wedge bolt with the driving box was hot and cold. If the driving box was hot, would cool off the first. would it cool off first, and where the wedge would not did not come down easily, would run down, drive over the good sides, but cooling off the box and putting the tension over the wedge bolt and oiling the wedge down with the box will often get loose with the running of the next step, and there's no such thing as stuck wedge in the box for the 6 accounts to the wedge being set and up tight, and lack of the oil between the box and the face of the wedge, expansion of the box, heating expansion of the box to the stick. 217. Effective lap and lead with the position eccentric. How do you lead the lap of the valve with the effective with the position eccentric? Answer. When the valve is used with no lap lead with the position eccentric right angle with the pin of 90 degrees, no, assume the top of the bottom with the rocker arms the equal length with the you add 1 inch for the edge of the valve with giving the valve with a 1 inch lap. If the engine stood at the forward center of the valve that had no lap with the eccentric with the right angle with the pin, putting the valve with the head 1 inch over the lap lead would have more move the eccentric toward with the pin amount with the lap of the valve with bringing it into the former position. If you give it the valve with the lead, but then also advance the amount with the lead as well as the wood, push the lower rocker arm forward to bring the top of the arm back, and then which would bring the valve of the position to the steam port with the amount of the lead. Hence the rule to set the eccentric right angle to the pin, but then advance them toward the pin amount with the lap lead. 218. Length of the smoke box. What should be the length of the locomotive smoke box be if there is one with a question list of proportional? Answer. We are unable to give it the form of the length of the smoke box portion of the diameter of the boiler shell when the two general types of the short smoke boxes extend front and with herewith are given with the length of the front end of the smoke box diameter of the boiler shell. Some of the locomotive boiler's recent designs. Diameter shell 70 inches, length of the smoke box 69, 82 inch shell, 73 inch smoke box, 77 inch shell, 66 inch smoke box, 70 inch shell, 101 inch smoke box, 60 inch shell, 54 inch smoke box, 74 inch shell, 52 inch smoke box. Much depends on the size of the boiler with the class of the engine in order to keep the length of the smoke box with the reasonable limits of the fluid for the increase of the length of the question would be applied with more boiler design with the promotion fireman's position of the engineer. 219. Alright, with the course of the steam from the boiler to the stack, answer the question, 7th examination question for the promotion of these and their answer. And it's not quite clear to me if the steam comes with the exhaust through the cylinder saddle with the certain to go through the cylinder saddle before the doing its work. The blueprint I have say with the steam passing through the valve with the standpipe, with the dry pipe, with the steam pipe, with the cylinder saddle, with the emission port, with the cylinder, with the answer for the question, 7th reads the steam pass through the dome with the throttle valve through the dry pipe, with the steam pipes into the steam shaft. Will not why not say the steam pipe cylinder saddle with the steam shaft for the emission port, with the vice versa, the fence, to the cylinder. How many openings for the cylinder saddle? The name of the give us each. Answer. The answer to the question does not always give every detail, but the sufficient clearly assumed to enable him to understand without further study on his part, and will try to expand with the merely full view would suggest examining the locomotive to the shop of the repair of the fluid for the boiler, strip of the cover, the steam shaft of the cylinder heads removed. The steam is generated with the near the heating surface of the boiler, rise to the size of the dome, into the dome, throttle valve with the opening center of the opening steam end of the sandpipe with the valve through the dry pipe with the vinegar head of the T with the smoke box, the engine with the steam pipe conducted with the cylinder saddle through and thence through the passage AA. See the illustration. In Figure 1 shows the longitudinal section cylinders AA and B and C. If the valve of the center of the seat, it can't go no further with the port uncovers the valve of the seam, the admitted to the end of the cylinder near to the open of the emissions shown with the BB exerts the pressure on the piston nearly equal to that steam chest pressure with the little port, and the opening of the pressure exerted on the piston transmitted with the piston rod connecting the rod to the crankpin produces the corrosive effect on the wheel proportional to the pressure of the piston and position of the crankpin above the below the drawn through. Alright, Figure 2 shows the valve seat and the cylinder saddles in top view, and Figure 3 shows the cross-sectional cylinders and saddles. Alright, the center of the main driving axle in the cylinder, if the steam was cut off before the piston was reached to the end of the stroke, the valve to close with the port, with the steam combined with the cylinder force with the piston's completion of the stroke, expansion force of the acting like a spring, the expansion of the steam into the cylinder with the push of the end to the push the piston end of the stroke, and the escape of the emission port with which extension of the passage of the valve over the bridge with into the exhaust pipe. See therefore through the cylinder of the saddle again the exhaust pipe of the out of the nozzle type of the tip through the petticoat of the dry pipe of the out of the sack. Therefore, usually first openings of the cylinder saddle of the steam chest of the shown figure in the illustration, Figure 1 shows the sectional view of the cylinder was cut into two lengths, and though through its center of the Figure 2 shows the view looking down with the valve seat with the cylinder saddle. Figure 3 shows the end of the view with the showing the construction of the dotted line with the representing line that cannot be seen with the port A and A to admit with the steam chest with the throttle with the open ports B and B admit the steam the cylinder alternately with the undercover of the valve the ports B and B and C exhaust steam from the cylinder when exhaust cavity the valve extended for the over the ledge between the boards of the B and C. The opening the cylinder valve saddles in connection with the steam pipe. The steam passage for the purpose of supplying steam with the steam chest for the opening of the E allows the steam to escape at the cylinder and through the ports B and C's exhaust. 220 difference in amount of the water used with the engine in the same class. The two engines having the same size boiler doing the same work, carrying the same steam pressure, running by the same engineer. One of these boilers used the 2/3 more water than the other boilers. Only all the same class for the engine. Can you enlighten me in regard to the cause? Alright, can you give the real cause of the engine using the 2/3 more water other than the same class? And think of the figure lightly high. The figure is lightly high. The class for the surface is not yet started. Assuming that all the boilers engine for the class for the same condition for the free of the course from Leyden scale, the water for the evaporated steam, the valve of the cylinder package with the same comparable conditions, maybe the nozzle exhaust passage, the restricted causing the back pressure from the cylinder of the engine work for the harder to handle the same tonnage, making the time this and that. There maybe have the change for the cylinder heads. This end of the engine working went through the shop for repair. The cylinder head with a different pattern, but may be thinner and increase the cylinder clearance, therefore using more steam. The same increase in cylinder clearance would occur with the piston substitute with the valve. There is more nozzle clear with measure of the distance between the front of the valve and the back of the spider. Compare the other engine, but the same with the class. If the engine surfaces were worked with the short cut off, the increase of the clearance would give the increased water for the fuel consumption. Then again, the exhaustive cavity valve may have been cut out with the enlarged, giving the engine valve with the exhaust clearance, which would allow the strain to the escape of the cylinder to assume or the expand of the cylinder to proper portion of the stroke, thereby losing the expansion compression, as it's hard to tell just what the trouble in the case in the head, but someone in the locomotive department should get busy. Alright, question number 221. Temperatures of the steam, different pressure. What is the rule for figuring the temperature of the steam locomotive boiler when a different pressure? The answer: the simple form of the rule to determine the temperature of the steam, various pressures from the steam table to give the temperature of the pressure is not available. One of these give the work of the below to give the air an air of less than 1.5 degrees, and nearly all case the pressure over the 100 pounds. T is equal to temperature in degrees in Fahrenheit. P is equal to gauge pressure in pounds per square inch, or P minus 100. Then T is equal to 14 times the square root of P plus 190 minus P 100 divided by 10. Taking 200 pounds, we'll have the P of 200. The square root of 200 is 14.15. Multiplied by the 14 equals 19. 198.1 plus 198 equals 396.1. Pressure minus is 100 divided by 111, 9.1, or 200 minus 100 is equal to 100, which divided by 11 equals 9.1. Then the 396.1 minus 9.1 equals 387 degrees. Temperature of the steam at 200 pound pressure. Question 222, circulation in the boiler. Which is meant with the circulation in the boiler? The answer: free movement of the water may become with the contact with the heating surface after being converted with the steam fresh supply with the taking the place with the evaporated water absorbed the heat and becomes lighter with the rise with the surface of the cold water being heater. Heavier and taking place, circulation depends on the condition of the boiler in which it should be free, and of the scale and the mud of the fluid. There should be space to allow the free movement of the water. 223, blocking the broken reverse level of the reach route. If the blocking the broken reverse level of the reach route with the good practice block on the top of the both links, with a simple block with one link of the cut off the valve, the engine will handle if the both links are blocked, would not be slip of the link of the block with the cut of the wooden blocks to be pounded into the piece for the possible damage to link motion. Answer: in case of the broken reverse level down reach with the ride with the pot may be possible lack of the tumbling shaft of the arm with the rubbing board. If not, sometimes it may be advisable to place the bar on an iron or wood across the top of the frame with under the link arms to hold the links in possible position to give the required cutoff but the blocking the arm should be securely fastened with the blocking the links to hold them to position better the blocking only one link. Even if the working the full gear with a small block should be placed between the link block and the top of the link with preventing damage of an increased travel of the valve. The block link one will answer the purpose for the block links will be blocked and solid, but there are no chance of the link and the slip of the link block damage would result in link motion. Alright, question 224. Effective of the change length of the eccentric rod. I noticed that the answer for the question: what would the effect of the change of the length of the eccentric rod have with the lap of the lead with the valve? So you say that the lead would affect the change of the length of these rods, but the lap would not be changed. Now that you read many of the changes of the mechanical books, that the lead is bound with the port opening with the beginning of the The stroke is brought about only with the angularity of veins for the eccentric on the shaft. The lap of the port of the valve extend with the steam port of the valve of the middle position. The delay of the mission is enabled to the ensure secure the early cutoff of the node. Your answer admits the lead that's secured not only by the angular device but also the changing of the length of the eccentric rod of the point with which I fully agree. But it was not clear to me what the lap is. I also changed the emission delay with the cutoff of the casting on the end of it. For example, suppose the go ahead eccentric rod for the indirect valve with motion outside of the emission lengthen that would shorten the forward travel the valve with the length and the backward travel the measuring the line drawn through the center of the exhaust port. Now the center line with the travel that has been moved with the amount equal to the change of the length of the eccentric rod, but both the rocker arms being the same length. Such change would cause the steam to appear too early in front of the end of the cylinder, too late of the back end. With the cutoff would be late of the front end, the earlier to the back end. Now, would this not virtually increase the lead at one end of the lap of the other? Answer: according to the answer to the question, you are correct in stating that the lap of the chain with the weld to lead with the eccentric rod length with the shorten and the lead would increase one end of the lap of the other. The answer states that the lap of the valve with the fixed amount with the never varies with the changing of the length of the eccentric rod would have no effect on it in going. That is truth. Now the lead obtained with advancing the eccentric rack toward the pin with the angle of 90 degrees. The amount of lap, the amount of the lead, therefore, the lead given the advance for the eccentric heat with the axle fixed with the quantity lap of the valve, with the neglecting the wear of the valve gear, generally speaking, with the lead, with the means, with the leading of the opening of the end, for the trouble the stroke. If the motion engine is moving the length of the shortening of the eccentric rod, you will not change the lead more than you would change the lap of the valve. Although you state that you would have too much opening at the end of the too much opening at one end of the valve, not enough at the other. Same results would obtain with the lengthening of the shortening of the valve if it was made adjusting, but it could not decrease the lead of the engine. Changing the length of the eccentric valve rod would say the changing the length of the we would say that the changing of the length of the eccentric rod does not affect the lap or the lead valve. Alright, question 225. Wagon top of the boiler. Describe the wagon top boiler. A wagon top boiler has a shell over the crown sheet with a much larger but the cylindrical part of the boiler with a dome located over the firebox crown sheet supported with the crown bar. The larger part tapers off of the boiler. Shells ahead of the throat sheet for the extent of the wagon top of the boiler with a high part of the wagon top extending farther forward, usually with the first ring of the boiler shell, the dome, and display for the head of the crown with the sheet with the extent of the wagon type of the give the increase of steam space in the boilers. Okay, and then I'm going to cut the tape at 125.